My name is Arthur, and for 28 years, I believed I knew the sound of my wife's soul. I knew the cadence of her breathing when she slept, the specific sigh she made when she was disappointed, and the particular lilt in her laughter that could brighten the darkest of my days. But it was a different sound, one I was never meant to hear, that shattered my entire world and set me on a path I never could have imagined. It began not with a shout, not with a slammed door, but with a whisper, a single breathy name that was not my own, escaping from her lips in the sanctity of our own bed. It was a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary Tuesday that makes up the fabric of a long marriage. We'd eaten meatloaf, a recipe she'd inherited from her mother. We'd watched a forgettable crime drama on television, her feet tucked under my legs on the couch for warmth. We'd discussed whether or not we should finally replace the aging water heater before winter, a conversation that was more about the strain on our retirement savings than it was about plumbing. It was all so devastatingly normal. That night, as I drifted into sleep, the weight of a 57-year-old body that had worked hard for 35 of them settling into the mattress, I was pulled back to consciousness by a sound. A murmur, soft, almost inaudible. I shifted, thinking it was just a dream fragment. Then it came again, clearer this time. A whisper, laden with an intimacy that stole the air from my lungs. Liam. I lay perfectly still, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape a cage. The name hung in the dark bedroom, a ghost I couldn't see. Liam. I ran through a mental roster of everyone we knew. Our dentist was named Larry. A guy I golfed with occasionally was named Leo. We didn't know a single Liam. Not a coworker, not a neighbor, not the son of a friend. The name was alien, yet my wife, Eleanor, had spoken it with a familiarity that suggested it belonged to someone who occupied a space deep inside her. I spent the rest of the night staring at the faint cracks in our ceiling, tracing the patterns I'd seen 1,000 times before. Each one now felt like a fissure in the foundation of my life. By the time the gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, I had convinced myself it was nothing. A dream, a strange, random utterance from a sleeping mind. Eleanor woke, smiled at me with the same soft, morning smile she always had, and asked if I'd slept well. The normalcy of it was a balm, and I desperately wanted to believe it. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and in the fertile soil of a 28-year marriage, with all its accumulated quietness and taken-for-granted trust, that seed began to grow thorns. The first twist, the one that truly pulled the rug out from under me, came about a week later. It was so mundane, so innocuous, that it almost slipped by me. Eleanor was at her book club, a monthly gathering of women from the neighborhood that she'd been a part of for a decade. I was paying bills online, a task I hated, a constant reminder that despite a lifetime of work, we were always just one major repair away from financial worry. I needed the password to our shared email account, the one we used for utilities and statements. It was an old password, one we'd had for years. Arthur and Eleanor _2001. The year we'd bought our house. The login failed. I typed it again more carefully. Failed. Password incorrect. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I clicked. Forgot password. The security question. What is your favorite book? Easy. To Kill a Mockingbird. She'd read it to our daughter, Sarah, countless times. I typed it in. Incorrect. I stared at the screen. That's when I noticed it. The email address wasn't ours. It was close, Eleanor.J.Peterson instead of Eleanor.Peterson, but it was different. I was locked out. She had created a new, separate email account, and she had changed the password to all our joint financial logins. My mind raced, trying to find an innocent explanation. Security? A phishing scare she'd forgotten to tell me about? But why a new email? Why a secret favorite book? When she came home, cheeks flushed from a glass of wine and the cool night air, I asked her about it as casually as I could, my voice a little too tight. Hey, honey, I tried to log in to the electric bill today. The password didn't work. Her smile didn't falter, but I saw it. A flicker in her eyes, a momentary freeze before the answer came. Oh, that. I'm so sorry, Arthur. I read this article about online security for seniors and I got paranoid. I changed all the passwords. I meant to tell you. It's now Liam Loves, the Rain after 2023. A bit silly, I know. The room tilted. Liam. There it was again. This time, not a ghost in the dark, but etched into the digital lockbox of our lives. She'd said it so smoothly, with a perfectly constructed reason. Liam loves the rain. Who was he? A character from one of her books? A new author she liked? Liam? I asked, my throat dry. Oh, just a character from this novel we're reading for book club, she said, waving a hand dismissively as she hung up her coat. He's terribly romantic. It was the first thing that popped into my head. It was a good lie, a believable one. If I hadn't heard that name whispered in the dark, I would have accepted it without a second thought. But I had heard it, and now the lie was a confirmation. The seed of doubt wasn't just growing. It had broken through the surface, a poisonous, thriving thing. If you've ever stood in a room with the person you've loved for decades and realized you are looking at a stranger, you'll understand the profound disorientation that followed. It's a unique kind of heartbreak, one that mixes nostalgia with a chilling sense of fear. I started noticing other things. The way her phone was always face down. The new passcode she'd put on her iPad. She'd started going to the gym 3 times a week, something she'd never shown interest in before. Just trying to keep these old bones moving, Art, she'd said with a laugh. But she'd come back smelling not of sweat, but of her same familiar perfume. I felt like a detective in my own life, and I hated myself for it. This wasn't me. I was Arthur Peterson, a man who fixed industrial printers for a living, a man who believed a handshake was a contract and marriage was a sacred vow. But the man I was had been built on the foundation of Eleanor, and that foundation was turning to quicksand. I had to know. The not knowing was a physical pain, a constant ache in my chest. One afternoon, while she was out on one of her extended gym sessions, I did the unthinkable. I went into her home office. Her laptop was there. I tried the old password, the one for everything. It didn't work. I tried a few variations, our daughter's name, our old dog's name. Nothing. Then, feeling like the worst kind of villain, I remembered the new password she'd given me. Liam Loves the Rain _2023. I held my breath and typed it in. The laptop unlocked. My hands were trembling. This was it. The point of no return. I was about to deliberately look for evidence that would destroy my life. But the need for the truth was a stronger force than the desire for peace. I opened her browser. The history was cleared. Of course it was. I checked her email, the real one, the secret Eleanor.J.Peterson account. It was logged in. My heart was a drum solo in my ears. There were dozens of emails. Most were mundane newsletters, store coupons. But there was one name that appeared again and again in the sent folder. Liam Connolly. I opened the most recent one. It was sent just yesterday. My dearest Liam, it began. The words on the screen blurred for a moment. My dearest. She hadn't called me that in years. I'm counting the hours until Friday. This week has dragged on forever. It feels like a lifetime since I was in your arms. Since I could breathe in the scent of you and forget about water heaters and bills and the quiet, crushing weight of a life that feels like it's already been lived. You make me feel alive again. Liam, you make me feel seen. When you read me your poetry, it's like you're reading from the pages of my own soul. I love you. Always E. I read it once, then again, and a third time. Each word was a shard of glass piercing some vital organ inside me. The quiet, crushing weight of a life that feels like it's already been lived. That was our life, our marriage, our 28 years together, the home we'd built, the daughter we'd raised, the struggles we'd endured. It was all just a crushing weight to her, a life already lived. And this Liam, this poet, he was her escape. He made her feel alive. I apparently did not. The pain was so acute it was nauseating. It was a physical blow. I stumbled to the small bathroom down the hall and vomited, my body convulsing with the shock of it. I sat on the cold tile floor, my head in my hands, and I wept. I wept for the young man who had married Eleanor in a small church filled with sunlight. I wept for the father who had held his newborn daughter and looked at his wife with a love so vast it felt like it could power the sun. I wept for all the ordinary Tuesdays that I had cherished and she had apparently endured. The second twist, the one that truly broke me, came from the rest of the emails. I went back, a glutton for punishment, and read them all. They spanned 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of her telling me she was at book club, at the gym, running errands when she was with him. They were love letters, full of a passion and poetry that felt completely alien to the woman I made meatloaf with. This wasn't a fling. This was a full-blown love affair. And then I found the financial thread. There were emailed receipts. A weekend getaway to a bed and breakfast in Vermont. I remembered that weekend. She told me she was going on a women's wellness retreat, something she needed to do for herself. I'd supported her. I'd even given her $500 in cash for incidentals. The receipt showed the room was paid for with our joint credit card, the one we used for groceries. She'd disguised the transaction under the name of a local grocery store. There were more. Dinner at expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Tickets to a symphony. Gifts. She was funding her affair with our money, the money I sweated for, the money we were supposed to be using to secure our fragile retirement. The betrayal was now twofold. It wasn't just my heart she had broken. It was our future, our security. The anger began to simmer then. A hot, clean force that burned away some of the grief. This wasn't just an emotional crime. It was a financial one. I copied everything. Every email, every receipt. I sent them to my own secret, newly created email account. I closed her laptop, wiped my fingerprints from it, and left her office exactly as I found it. I was now a stranger in my own home, a spy gathering intelligence on the enemy. The man who valued trust above all else was now operating in a world where trust was a weapon that had been used against him. The next few days were a study in surreal agony. I had to look at her, eat with her, sleep next to her, all while knowing. The knowledge was a physical weight on my tongue, stopping me from speaking. I watched her move through our house. This beautiful 56-year-old woman with laugh lines around her eyes that I had once traced with my finger. And I saw a masterful performer. She was so normal, so Eleanor. She asked me if I wanted more mashed potatoes. She complained about the neighbor dog barking. She folded my socks. And all the while, her secret life, her life with Liam, was humming along just beneath the surface. I became obsessed. I needed to see him. I needed to look this phantom in the eye, this poet who had stolen my wife's soul. From their emails, I pieced together their routine. Every Friday afternoon, she went to him. She told me she was at a yoga class. Their next meeting was in 2 days. Friday came. I called in sick to work, something I almost never did. I told Eleanor I had a migraine and was going to spend the day in the dark bedroom. She seemed concerned, genuine. She brought me aspirin and a glass of water, her hand cool on my forehead. The hypocrisy of the gesture was staggering. After she left, supposedly for her yoga class, I waited 10 minutes. Then I got dressed, my hands shaking not from sickness, but from a volatile cocktail of rage and heartbreak. I drove to the address I'd found in one of the emailed receipts. It was for a florist, but the billing address was a condo in a trendy part of the city, a neighborhood of renovated warehouses and art galleries, a world away from our quiet, suburban street of aging split levels. I parked my sensible sedan a block away, feeling conspicuous and old. And then I waited. An hour passed. Then I saw her car. My Eleanor. She pulled into the parking lot of a modern condominium building. Her movements quick, furtive. She got out, smoothed her dress, a stylish, knee-length blue one I'd never seen before, and walked to a ground floor unit. The door opened before she could even knock. And there he was, Liam. The third twist, the one I was least prepared for, wasn't about his appearance or his age or anything so trivial. It was about what I saw in that doorway. He wasn't a young, muscular Adonis. He was a man roughly my age, maybe a few years younger. He had graying hair, a bit longer than mine, and he wore glasses. He was wearing a sweater. He looked ordinary. He looked like a guy I might have a beer with. He looked like me, but the way he looked at her, that was what shattered the last of my composure. He didn't just open the door. He looked at her as if she were the only woman in the world. His face lit up with a joy so pure, so unguarded. It was like a physical light. He reached for her hand, pulled her inside, and as the door closed, I saw him cradle her face in his hands and kiss her with a tenderness that spoke of deep, familiar love. This wasn't a seedy affair. This wasn't just about sex. Watching them, for that brief, devastating moment, I saw two people who were profoundly in love. It was the look we used to have 25 years ago. The look I thought we'd lost to the gentle erosion of time and responsibility. He hadn't just stolen my wife. He had given her back a version of herself I hadn't been able to provide. The anger I'd been clinging to morphed into a devastating, profound grief. I had lost her. Not just now, but a long time ago. I had been living with a ghost, and I hadn't even known it. I drove home in a daze. The world outside the car window looked the same, but it wasn't. It was a world where my wife loved another man. I went back to bed, the darkness a fitting shroud for my despair. When she came home hours later, she smelled of rain and fresh air. She peeked into the bedroom. "How's your head, sweetheart?" "A little better," I mumbled into the pillow. She came over and kissed my temple. Her lips felt like a brand.
I'm glad.
My yoga class was wonderful, so invigorating. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the evidence in her face, to shout the name Liam until the windows rattled. But I didn't. The sight of them together, the sheer normalcy of their love, had stolen my rage and left only a cold, hard clarity. A reckless, vengeful plan began to form in my mind. If this was the end, I would not be the only one who lost everything. I became a ghost in my own life for the next 2 weeks. I documented everything with the cold precision of an accountant. I tracked the money she spent. I printed out the emails. I hired a discreet private investigator, a retired cop I found through a friend of a friend, and had him follow Liam. I needed to know everything about him. His life, his work, his vulnerabilities. I wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. I was a general preparing for a war I never wanted to fight. The investigator's report was a revelation. Liam Connolly was a moderately successful poet and a part-time professor at the local community college. He was divorced. He had a daughter in college. And he was, by all accounts, a decent, quiet man. There was no other woman. No secret vices. He seemed to genuinely love Eleanor. This information was a new kind of torture. It would have been easier if he were a monster. My plan was simple and cruel. I would wait for the perfect moment. I would let her believe her secret was safe. And then, I would take it all away from both of them. I would expose their affair in the most humiliating way possible. And I would make sure she paid a financial price for her deception. I consulted a lawyer, a sharp, unsentimental woman named Brenda who didn't bat an eye at my story. She told me that with the evidence I had of the dissipated marital assets, I could potentially secure a much more favorable divorce settlement. "She's been using your joint funds to finance her affair, Arthur," Brenda said flatly. "The judge will not look kindly on that." The day I chose was our daughter Sarah's birthday. Sarah was 25, living 2 states away, building her own life. Eleanor had planned a small family dinner, just the 3 of us over a video call. She was in the kitchen, baking Sarah's favorite cake, a chocolate fudge monstrosity we'd made for her every year since she was 5. The house was filled with the warm, sweet smell of it. She was humming, happy. She was thinking of our daughter, and she was, I knew, thinking of Liam. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her. This was the woman who had held my hand through my father's funeral, who had cheered louder than anyone when I finally got my supervisor's promotion, who had cried with me when we dropped Sarah off at college. 28 years of a life, now reduced to this final, terrible scene. "Eleanor," I said, my voice calm, steady. She turned, a smear of chocolate on her cheek. She smiled. "Yes, honey? The cake's almost done. The call with Sarah is in an hour. We need to talk before that," I said. Her smile faded slightly, sensing the tone in my voice. "Okay, what about?" I walked to the kitchen table and placed the thick manila folder down. It landed with a soft, final thud. "It's about Liam," I said. The color drained from her face so completely it was as if someone had pulled a plug. Her hand, holding a wooden spoon, began to tremble. The spoon clattered to the floor, splattering chocolate batter on the clean tiles. What are you talking about?" she whispered, but the fight was already gone from her voice. She knew. "I know everything, Eleanor. The emails, the money, the condo, the poetry. I know you told him our life is a quiet, crushing weight. I know you love him." She staggered back, grabbing the counter for support. Her eyes were wide with terror and shame. "Arthur, it's not what you think. Ever since the night I heard you whisper his name," I said. The video call with Sarah was the most difficult performance of my life. We sat side by side on the couch, a united front. Eleanor's eyes were red-rimmed, but she had washed her face and put on a brave smile. She chatted. She laughed. She told Sarah she loved her. I did the same. We were the perfect parents, the loving couple, one last time. As we signed off, saying our goodbyes, I felt the final thread of our marriage snap. The next day, she packed a suitcase. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak. As she walked out the front door, the same door we'd carried our newborn daughter through, she paused for a moment on the threshold. She didn't turn back. She just stood there, and then she was gone. The divorce was final 6 months later. Thanks to the evidence, I kept the house and the majority of our retirement savings. The judge agreed that Eleanor had recklessly dissipated marital assets. She got a settlement, but it was a fraction of what it might have been. She moved in with Liam. I heard through the grapevine that they were happy, but that money was tight. The poet's income, it turned out, wasn't as romantic as his words. I sold the house. I couldn't bear the ghosts. I bought a small condo near the lake. It's quiet. Some days the quiet feels peaceful. Other days it feels like that crushing weight she described. I think about her every day. I think about the young woman she was, and the stranger she became. I think about Liam, a decent man who fell in love with a married woman, and the price he ultimately paid for it. My revenge was complete. It was logical. It was just, I had protected myself financially. I had exposed her lies. I had won by any objective measure. But if you've ever stood in the ruins of a life you spent decades building, you know that there are no real winners. There is only the before and the after. There is the memory of a whisper in the dark, and the long, silent echo that follows. If this story touched you, if it resonated with that deep, fearful part of you that wonders about the secrets your loved ones might keep, then hit subscribe and don't miss the next heartbreak that will leave you speechless. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers a name in the night.